Hello, friends of Solar Body Alchemy. How are you doing? This is Valentina from Dublin.
And it's Kate from England.
Wonderful. So this evening, this is our second week with the Libra sign. So we are going to talk a little bit about Libra. And in particular, what we are going to talk about it today is balance. Because the star sign, the symbol of Libra, is a scale with the plates in perfect balance. So if you remember last week, we talked at length about relationships, about Libra in relationships. So this evening is going to be all about balance and how we find or lose our balance into relationships. Kate, what do you think about this theme? What do you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, Libra is ruled by Venus, and it's the scales of balance. So we're talking about, as you said, in relationship, and balance of the heart. And it's interesting, I'm thinking about that sort of Egyptian analogy of the scales and the heart being weighed up against a feather at the point of death. And if your heart was fair, you would go over to the afterlife. And whenever I think of Libra in the scales, I think about that and how Libras are very driven by what's fair in relationships. And they kind of extend the sense of fairness because they will put themselves a little bit at a deficit if it means saving the relationship. They think about the bigger picture, the longer term. And in small amounts, there is that need for diplomacy, being able to look at the other person's point of view and saying, you know what, okay, maybe I overreacted or something like that. But what we can find as well is if we get out of balance, we lose that sense of the scales and the fairness of things being equal, of things being balanced within give and take from one person to the other. We're never going to have this concept of unconditional love because we get that as babies and babies alone. That's where you kind of, mom or dad or primary caregiver says, look, whatever you do, I'll love you. As adults in adult relationships, there's always going to be some kind of a preferences or understandings or
conditions, actually, really conditions.
Absolutely. I'll love you, but if you have an affair, for example, I may leave you. Or I love you, but I want children and you don't, so it may not work. So these are conditions that are quite important for people's happiness, their health, their well-being.
That's very true.
And if we get out of balance with our own sense of what we want and what we need, sometimes we can find ourselves in relationship not getting our needs met because we're allowing an imbalance to happen within that relationship.
And also we are touching on it, this sense of what's fair in a relationship, because Libra actually is also the star sign that represents justice. So what's fair into a relationship, not only to the other person, but also what's fair to you in a relationship. So for example, if you find yourself mistreated in a relationship, not just once, but all the time, something is not quite there. Or if you are on the other side, so if you mistreat someone all the time, this sense of balance, again, as you were mentioning before, falls. There is no longer balance. There is no longer harmony. There is no longer justice.
And it can be a gradual thing, because when we first meet someone and we're in love and it's all wonderful, and there are some things that we choose not to see, and there are some things that we may allow because we're intoxicated by the endorphins and the dopamine and all these chemicals that are saying, wow, this is amazing. Say, for example, if you're really, really falling for someone, but there's one particular thing that they're doing, and normally you'd be like, okay, that's a deal breaker. because that doesn't fit with my values. And it could be something small to start with. Say they never say sorry. If they made a mistake, they don't say sorry. And initially you might think, oh, well, eventually we'll talk about that. But you keep overextending and overextending and overextending until one day you really need them to say sorry, and they don't.
Yeah.
And the backlog of you not saying anything up until that point, all of a sudden you might completely respond disproportionately to a situation, saying, I can't believe you didn't say sorry. And the other person's like, where is this coming from? Where I don't understand. Because if you keep allowing a behavior to happen without saying firmly, this is how I feel about that, then you've fallen outside of your own sense of your values, your structure, your stability, to have the connection with someone else.
Yes, that is very true.
The person's fault either, because they'll just continue to allow you to do whatever you're doing, unless they see there as being a need to have a conversation around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, it's interesting because at the beginning you always think, or you might think, oh yeah, but they are going to change, or I can change them. But again, as you said, it actually not being in touch with ourselves, because in a way we are actually giving our balance away, because we are thinking that the other person can do something, but they are not going to.
No, and that's where you get to that point in a relationship where you say, is this fair? Do I keep putting up with this that doesn't feel good, and this person won't change? At what point do you say, okay, I need to not be part of this, or I need to stop overextending myself and see if this person will meet me here instead?
Yeah.
And we don't know that we've lost balance sometimes if it's been a subtle process of gradually not getting our needs met.
Yeah, that is very true. And we perhaps can also talk about, what if you never had balance to start with?
Well, yeah, and sometimes we can fall for someone and lean on them. This person is my support. I can lean into this person. So what happens if that person goes away? Do you collapse?
Yes.
And it might be lovely for that person to start with, for you to lean into them and then to feel strong. But at what point does that become out of balance, where you're not supporting them when they need some support, if you've got no sense of your own balance and stability?
Absolutely. So loads to talk about and to think about. And I think that, this is actually such a big theme, because in relationships it is quite easy, to give or to consider the other person for granted, to take the other person for granted, okay? Especially if the other person is the strong one, it's kind of easy to think, oh yeah, but he can fix this for me, or she can support me in that, It's very important to reestablish this balance and to think, yeah, of course I can support, I could lean on him or I could lean on her, but I can also be myself. So
yes,
it's a very, very important concept. And I also think, for example, if you are coming from a chaotic family, okay, where your parents didn't have their own balance, so you couldn't even model yourself after someone with balance, so you naturally assume that everyone is like you, they don't have balance. So, and I remember you mentioning it, that it's quite easy to find a Libra in a chaotic situation. It's like they're attracted by chaos somehow.
Yeah, you'll always find Libra where there's chaos, because they need to stabilize, they need to harmonize the environment. So in order for them to do that, they have to find environments that need that quality. And it's also making me think about traditional cultural differences where there might be very defined roles. And as men or as women, we may feel out of balance unless we have a counterpart in relationship to play out the opposite role of what we haven't been taught as children. So, for example, women may have been raised to have children and not work, or men might have been raised to work and find a wife to raise a family. There might be very, very set ways of existing, and that those traditions are becoming much more fluid. And that brings up for the children of quite strict cultures a sense of, I don't really know who I am, because maybe my traditions don't suit me, but I also don't have role models or reference points of how to be both, providing for myself, regardless of if I'm in partnership or not. Because those are sometimes big choices that people make. Well, if I want to have children, then I have to have support, rather than, okay, well, can I support myself and still have children, or do I want, whatever the alternatives are.
Yeah, I was doing one of my moon circles last Saturday, and a very important observation has been made by one of the women that took part in it, and she said, we are building the new paradigm. We cannot model ourselves after our mothers because we are completely different from our mothers. However, it's like we don't have at this stage yet someone to model ourselves after. And I found that actually that was a very, very sharp observation, because it's very true. It's what's happening now, exactly as you said. So if we have been raised in quite a strict conservative family and we have left that environment, however, that's what it has been carved into us. That's what it's in our blood, it's in our DNA. But that doesn't really match what we want, who we are, what we want out of a relationship.
And it's all curiosity and exploration.
Absolutely.
Because until you actually start embodying what some of these principles mean, it's difficult to get a sense of how you feel about it. So you may well have the genetic memory of your traditional upbringing from your mother and your mother's memories and all these type of things, but like you say, you're creating a new way of how do you want your future to be.
Exactly.
And the exploration of that you can do quite safely by noticing how your body responds to certain things, certain people, certain places, certain concepts. And we could do one of those now, looking at having a sense of balance and what it feels to be off balance. And that can be a kind of barometer for you to get a sense of, how do these things feel? What is balance as a movement, and what is being off balance?
Okay, Kate, so I leave you to the stage so you can guide us through this movement of exploring balance. So just give me. Okay, so we are ready when you are.
Okay, so the reason why it's important to come into the body is because every single one of our emotions, every single expression we have, has got a physical movement. Either you hold back the movement or you can express the movement. It's in our language. We say we're heartbroken, we've been punched in the gut, she's a pain in the neck, or he's a pain in the bum. There's a physical expression for all of these emotions. So when we're talking about being in balance in relationship and being off balance, there's also a physical movement and quality to that. And we're going to explore that now. So all you need is a bit of space to stand up, and enough space that when we come to the balancing component of this movement, that you're completely safe with the items around you. So you've got nothing that if you topple to the side, you can take yourself on. So what I want you to do initially is to have both feet firmly on the floor. Helps to have a flat surface. And you can have your eyes open or closed, whichever allows you to feel like you're in contact to the ground. And as we're getting a sense of how it feels to be in balance, you might want to have just a soft gaze towards one point of contact with the floor to start with. And when you've found that, really bring your focus into the contact of the feet. And notice where you're in contact with the ground. So you might be more into your heels, or you might feel the balls of your feet, maybe the outside edges or the inside arches. And if your knees are locked, to see how it feels to soften them slightly. And just notice if that gives you any more feeling of balance. And if it's less, let the legs straighten a bit more. And I'd just like you to explore that a little bit. So slightly bending the knees, bringing them back to straight. And just staying with whichever one lets you feel like you've got a real kind of 50-50 both legs. So each leg is fully making contact into the ground through your feet. And then just getting a sense of the position of your pelvis. So it might be that when you bend your knees, you can let your tailbone tuck slightly. And again, just noticing if that movement lets you feel a bit more rooted into the floor. If it doesn't, you can let the lower back arch slightly again. And then checking in with your shoulders and just noticing if you can shuffle them around so they can find a comfortable position just to sit without much effort. So maybe some circles or some shoulder shrugs. And if you like, you can now start to do a little bit of a gentle sway from one foot to the other foot. It can be a gradual small sway or a slightly bigger sway. And just exploring how that feels to weight shift from one to the other, completely within your control. Okay, so if you feel a bit wobbly, make the movement small. And the sway would feel like as if you're about to step forwards with one leg. You would move your weight over to the other leg to create a lightening feeling in the leg as if you're about to step it forwards. And just exploring that, exploring how your feet change their point of contact to the ground. And noticing the muscles that you use to do that. Bringing that movement to stillness now so that you've got both legs feeling like they've got contact through your feet and they're equally in contact with the ground, 50% each leg. We're now going to explore what it feels like to challenge that sense of balance. So start to let your weight shift over into your left leg. And if it's safe to, you can now lift the right foot so it comes up off the floor. And you can either lift your knee forwards and hold it, or if it's more comfortable, bring your foot to the inside of your left lower leg. So you've got this angle at the knee. Now it might be that you're experiencing some wobbling or something like that already, and if you are, just notice what's happening to the quality of your thoughts and your breathing, and what's happening with the muscles around your leg, especially that left leg, as it's trying to find or fight for the feeling of balance. And if that feels pretty solid and pretty grounded, what you could explore from here is closing your eyes. And if you take away that sense of vision, notice what happens to that sense of balance. Where does your thoughts suddenly disappear to? Or do you get a moment of a feeling in your body like a panic? Where's my ground? Where's my base? Now gradually coming out of that, bringing the foot back to the floor and coming back to what feels like your balance. Notice yourself in this position, feeling the contact of the ground through both legs. And we're going to explore the same movement, but just transitioning over to the other leg. So just, again, the same experience of exploring what it feels like to have balance and then come out of balance. To transition your weight over to your right leg. Either bringing the left foot so it sits inside, just resting on the inside of your lower leg, or you can lift the knee up and hold it in front of you. Whichever gives you a subtle sense of less balance to start with, and then you can explore closing your eyes. And notice how that feels to move from being confident in balance to what's happening when the balance is challenged. Where do your thoughts go? Where does your sense of your body shift to? And again, you can close your eyes, or if you want, you can take your arms up. Doing whatever gives you a sense of less contact through the floor. And then bring that left foot back to the floor. Let yourself feel that sense of balance again. And what I'd like you to imagine now, from this place of standing in balance, is either a person that you have felt a real giddy love for. It might be someone in your past, like the first childhood love you had, or someone famous who you've got a crush on, or someone who just makes you feel a little bit less controlled with how you feel about them than you may normally do. And you might even have an experience of falling in love, or love at first sight, or and as you bring that sense of that person to you now, imagining they were in front of you, and just getting a sense of how you move towards them. And noticing, do you find yourself falling falling in love? Are you pulling forwards onto the balls of your feet? As you think about that person in front of you that you love, or feeling of infatuation. And if you notice your feet firmly on the floor, can you get a sense of connecting with that person but still being in contact with the ground, firmly in your sense of balance? And you can come out of the exercise now, maybe shuffling your shoulders, just letting your body move, and coming away from the memories of that person or any thoughts about that individual. And then you've been standing, if you need to come to sit back down again, you can sit back down.
That was interesting, very interesting, Kate. You know, while we were doing it, especially the last part, it got me thinking about all the times and all the occurrences in our life when we didn't want to lose balance.
Yes.
So, you know, if, for example, if we have never gone after our crush.
Absolutely. That fear of getting lost in something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fear of losing our balance.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes it can be quite, if you've not felt those feelings before, quite disarming to think, oh my goodness, hang on. Where have I gone? Why is this all about this other person? Why can't I get this person off my mind?
Exactly.
That can be quite an overwhelming experience for people in love for the first time. Yeah. All of a sudden you're distracted when normally you'd be able to think logically.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So it was a lot, and also it got me thinking, you know, how challenging it can be, how difficult it can be to find our own balance, even with our own body, you know?
Yeah.
It's not something so immediate. So we can have our balance when we are solidly on our 2 feet. But what if something happens and we can't have both of our feet solidly on the ground?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we keep our balance then?
Absolutely. And how actually doing these exercises during periods of not feeling balanced can help your body to feel reassured.
Yeah.
Because these are literal as well as metaphorical exercises.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very, very powerful.
We are our bodies 24/7, so everything that's happening in our thoughts and our emotions has got the physical component to it as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. There can't be a body without a mind and a mind without a body.
No, and it's absolutely worth looking at. If you find yourself over the next week or so, or a few days that this might be in your thoughts, notice, do you find that you shift onto one leg, or are you lifting one foot off the floor, especially around certain people? If you need to feel more balance with that person in that relationship, feel both feet on the ground in communication with them.
And you know what also, notice, for example, if you lean against something.
Yeah.
Like if you find yourself leaning against a wall.
Yeah.
You know, those kind of things. Perhaps you need to feel more grounded in a situation.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just noticing what your body needs in that moment.
Yeah. Plenty to think about.
Absolutely. And next week we'll be focusing on another element of Libra, and more exercises to explore for expanding into this, all the Libran qualities around relationship to self and other.
Yes. So if you have questions, doubts, suggestions, let us know. Okay, drop us a comment, leave us a message. We are also on Facebook, and we will be happy to help you, okay, to answer your questions.
Bye for now.
Bye everyone, see you next week.